Welcome to MOTS, where we'll be applying the Manzer or Mosi-Thurlow scale of quantitative analysis of pop culture narrative through a binary system.
Or MOTS! This podcast contains spoilers, mature content, and language. Viewer discretion advised.
Welcome back to MOTS. We are continuing our Oscar escapades, if you will. We have just seen Fences. I, of course, remain Scott Thurlow, here tonight with J. Ian Manzer.
Well, that was depressing.
Yep, Rich Perry.
Still wiping away the tears.
Mm-hmm. And Stephen Amosi.
Hello.
All right. Yes. That basically sums up, perhaps, get a feeling for what we're going to talk about, how Fences was. But we'll go to E first with the somewhat funny logline, perhaps levity logline.
In honor of Arthur Miller, Death of a Garbage Man.
Mm-hmm. I think that's about right. If you get that, it should be amazing to you. And then Rich will give us the synopsis.
Man steps up to the bat for life, does his best, strikes out, but still comes back to win the game.
Yes, and the baseball
strikes out 3 times and then hits a home run.
Yeah, the baseball analogy we'll expand upon further.
I think it was more he bunted it at the end.
Yes,
that's true.
Sacrifice.
A sac fly, sure.
Well, you got to take the crookeds with the straights.
Exactly. So we'll get to all of that.
So they say.
But we'll go to it'll be you, Steve-O. So because of the nature of this film, we decided to combine intro and body into one sort of conglomerate. And so Steve-O, you go on with that.
This movie starts with a whirlwind, like 25-minute dialogue that's mostly a Denzel Washington monologue.
Mm-hmm. He's dialoguing at people.
Where he's just telling stories and being somewhat of a toned-down, normal Denzel Washington.
I suppose.
It's tough to say what happens in this movie because not all that much actually happens on screen.
It's a slice of life kind of a
but,
thing.
But he starts off. Actually, the very first scene is him with his buddy Bono talking. They're both garbage men. They're on the back of a garbage truck, just
bullshitting about life.
BSing. They get back to Troy, who is Denzel Washington's character's house. They get back there and continue to BS about life while Viola Davis's character, Rose, comes out and
who is his wife,
joins them in the BSing, kind of.
May I interrupt for a second because I think this is a really important aspect going in, is that this was a play before it became a film.
Mm-hmm.
And immediately, I didn't know that going in, and maybe 15 minutes into the film, I'm like, oh, this was a play.
It feels a lot
it's
like
very
that
obvious.
for sure. And, that's why.
It's blocked just like a play.
It is.
The way characters sit in one section and certain characters go in and other characters will come.
The way they interact.
The way they interact with props, the way that people enter scenes and exit scenes is exactly like a play.
Mm-hmm.
It's if you watch it,
it should be obvious
when you watch this movie, you will know that this is at least played like a play, if you will, and it's it makes perfect sense that it came from a play.
Right. So go on, and then
they just kind of are talking about life, and life sort of, I guess, kind of happens throughout. Like, there are tense moments, but it's all throughout. You don't really see anything happen on screen in this. It's all through dialogue that the characters have their epiphanies or their life-changing moments. A few things that happen. I'm not going to go on too long about this because I think where the heart of this movie is in the dialogue and in the style and in all the other themes. Is a very big one. But some of the things that happen in the body section are there's a tension between Troy and his son Corey that causes eventually tension between Troy and Rose, his wife. He's got this best friend Bono, who is basically his North Star, like kind of trying to keep him on the right track and like give him good sound advice. He's got Troy's got a brother who is has mental issues, and because he went to war and had, as Troy says in his own words, had half his head blown off.
He has a mental play. Just real quick, this is set
Right.
in Pittsburgh in like the late or mid 50s,
Mhm.
just to be clear. So that's the setting that it's placed in.
He's got a son from another woman, not Rose, named Lyons, who is a musician who kind of comes and goes and asks him. He's used to him asking him for money, and their dynamic changes a little bit at some point when Lyons comes back and like actually gives back the money.
Yeah, introduced.
One of the big things that happens, and this is before the climb, before the ending, before the conclusion, is that it turns out that Troy has been messing around on Rose and is going to have a kid with another woman.
Who never appears, by the way. That
Right,
his
the other
mistress
woman
is
never
not
comes
in
into the
film
picture
at all.
It's just a bunch of scenes in the backyard and in their kitchen that are them discussing the lighter and deeper and darker matters of life.
It's not just scenes, though. They're intense,
They
emotionally
We were
heavy.
all riveted
This is
when that
a
was happening.
thick stew, a hearty stew that sits heavily in your stomach as you're watching it.
It
It
is.
is like I needed. It's a play. I need an intermission just to process
Yeah.
the emotions
Yes.
of watching this.
And it turns on a dime
Mhm.
from being like, just Denzel Washington telling a story to like, holy shit, this story got so
The story he tells
Yeah.
takes a much
like
darker
deep
turn,
or dark or like whatever
meaningful turn.
the emotion, like you go through a whole range of emotions while watching this. But I think those are the big plot wise, those are the big things that happen. Am I missing anything?
No.
I would say that, and this is really the core of Troy's character, is you slowly realize that the foundation he's built his life upon, and I'm not talking about like a physical, but I'm talking about emotional and what he thinks is important in life, is a very tenuous surface.
Sure.
It's
Mhm.
all starting to collapse around him. The image he has of himself, the image of how life should be, and as it starts to crack, you really you like this character, or I liked this character a lot to begin with when this movie began,
I think we all did.
Yeah.
and then you slowly realize that this guy's full of shit.
Well, it very much turns when you realize that he's a hypocrite.
Yeah.
Well, they I think, what was it? His wife, Rose, mentioned that he was full of shit fairly early in the film.
Yes.
So did Bono.
Yeah.
So-
Yeah, they're like they just call him out on it, and like it's sort of lighthearted at that point. But then you come to realize that it's more. Oh, there's more to that than just
Right.
the surface. Of like, oh, you're just a bullshitter. Like, no, yeah, like you said, Steve-O, as this character becomes more rounded, you realize he's got a lot more flaws.
But yeah, he turns from like this good-natured, almost caricature in the beginning, who like just tells stories and he just into a human being.
Yeah.
Before you even realize it, kind of. And
It's
like,
those stories that he's spinning come to be like ones that he tells to himself.
Exactly.
Just to get him
Yeah.
through
Yes,
the day.
that's a perfect point. And yeah, it's seamless though the way the movie handles that, and I agree with that.
At the same time, he's living in the fictional present while also living in a fictional past
Mhm.
of these glory days that never happened.
Hmm.
So I'll just give an example. Although this is perhaps more towards the character discussion, but he mentions about how he could have been a baseball player, except that it was the racial culture of the time stopped him from being so. Then you find out that he was good, but he was in his 40s by the time
he started trying to
made
play
it
in his
by-
40s. Yeah,
Yeah.
So there was never a chance. It's just that he needs to always blame someone else for the problems that are surfacing in
It's
his
good how
life.
they showed that too. It was like first it was his wife calling him out, and then it was like the conversation with his son where he kept throwing like baseball players at him that could
Yeah.
possibly be better than him, and he's just like, I'm through with this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's like, "Nah, I'm
Conversation's
done
over."
talking about that
Yeah.
now. Yeah, he realizes exactly. So I think, like I said, it's all perfectly like just flows into itself
Mm-hmm.
in a play style way, as we said, and that's why we sort of we decided to combine intro and body because of that. It was hard to can't really point to a section and say here's where it cuts off. It's like I said, a slice of life. This is this guy's life, and this is his family members and his situation, and you just follow along with it. And we were pretty much fucking riveted the entire time, even though it's just basically them having conversations. And as you said, Steve, some bit deeper, darker, and some not, but nevertheless, that's just what happens in it. So
right, and just thinking about this again, I'm thinking about it. I love how true his character is to like a real person, where like he picks his battles with his wife. Like he somewhat tragically cuts his son off from playing football because of his own insecurities, which he can't even admit to himself that he did it for that reason.
Right, he can't,
and
see
like
that in himself. Exactly.
He throughout, at no point did I think that he was just being a bad person or just doing this for really. To some, he was doing it for selfish reasons, but I don't think that he
never thought that. Yeah,
he was doing it for selfish. He thought he was trying to make his son better, and even up till the end. Well, that I think that all gets into conclusion, but like there's a lot about this character and about this whole plot line that is really rings true. Like his motivations are very, like you said, very honest.
So I just want to, this might go to dialogue, but I want to sort of quickly pick an example from the film that exemplifies hopefully what you were saying, Steve-O. There's a point in which later on he has a confrontation with Corey, his son, and after they have sort of an argument tiff, Rose says to him, Troy wants you to be everything he isn't, but also everything he is.
Yeah.
Right? So like that's sort of like the dilemma that his character finds himself in, even if he can't even see that himself. So anyway, all I'm saying, I'm going to give both a 1.
I'm giving, Bob, anything
I,
a 1.
I did have something else to say.
Oh, I'm sorry.
The issues. I'm a big fan of going to see dramatic plays. I recently saw Blackbird, which was a great thing about, in a sense, sexual abuse and the power dynamic involved with that. I love Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, Cat on a Hot Tin Roof.
Yeah.
I like these oppressively dramatic works. This borderline on breaking me with the dramatic, just the thickness of it, to the point of like in the middle there was almost like no hope at all. It was just it was incredibly depressing.
Oppressive, I think, is the word for it.
But the problem is that it almost fell into a telenovela type style of like, oh, we're just gonna start throwing these aspects at
the
you.
line. It skirted the line.
It didn't fall into it. It skirted, and to the point where I'm like, I bought into the oppressive atmosphere that you're building. Now you're just lumping on top, and I think it might have been excessive at times, though. It never did skirt the line into self-parody.
I feel like it was very organic the way that it was handled.
Yes,
because they did a really good job of showing like the flaws of his character fairly early, and like what was it? Each character kind of had like a passing line on where Denzel's character was headed, and he just laughed it off until like the circumstances of the story just drove him down that path.
Yeah.
No, you're absolutely right about that, and I think that's the strength of it. While I see what you were saying, Ian, perhaps Rich, you to a lesser extent, it may have skirted with that, or like it was in danger. It never crossed that line, even though maybe it approached it.
It was definitely threatening it to me, but it rebounded, and the strength of the performances kept it afloat of what I could see. If handled with lesser actors, it could have fallen into.
Oh, I completely agree.
Yeah, so I see, like, I don't think I felt that to the extent you did, but I see what you mean. But regardless, because it was handled so well, as you said, it was, the talent was so top notch. I think they avoided that. So,
yeah, I would agree with that. I can see what you're saying, Ian, but I also think that at the same time, like the problems that they faced in this film, like as opposed to some of the other, like Blackbird, especially, for instance, were so like workaday like normal problems that families face, except for the having a kid with another woman and bringing
Which we'll get to
child
shortly,
into
but sure, I see what you're saying.
the house. But like like all of these things that were normal problems were brought to such a level of like just tension, and there was so much underlying every conversation that was happening. I really loved it. I'm going to give Intro and Body a 1.
Yeah, me too. They're put,
I'm giving them a
they're
1.
put on the spotlight and dissected very, very well.
You mean a 2?
Oh, a
Yes.
2. One
Yeah.
for each.
Each a 1, and I think I agree with that for sure. I think we're all doing that, it seems, yes?
Yes.
Mhm.
All right.
Yes.
And that will bring me to conclusion. So I think we agreed there's a... So it's not funny, I guess, per se, but it's set up earlier on. Like, he was talking... Troy is talking to Bono, his best friend of many years, and Bono knows that he has a bird on the side, essentially, like another woman who's not his wife.
Bird on the
Yeah,
side.
who's... and man, 1950s.
Yeah.
Who's been messing around with, if you will. And Troy has, of course, been keeping it from Rose, his actual wife of 16 or 18 years, a long
18.
time.
I
18.
think you said 18, yeah.
So finally, he screws up his courage to man up and tell her about it, admit to her that that's what he's been doing, and that is a hugely tense scene.
Well, not only that, but
Yeah, I'm getting to that. Like, in the midst of trying to relay this information to his wife and trying to be serious about it, his mentally damaged, unstable brother Gabriel shows up, and like who they try to they've always tried to take the best care that they can of him, but he obviously doesn't know what's going on. He interrupts their very serious adult conversation. So it's sort of like it's not quite levity, but it's a human moment, as we were saying, right?
Yeah.
You could see that totally happening, and so it becomes awkward now at the same time. But all I'm saying is like the reveal of that.
I have to give credit to both of them for like the way that they play their characters, where they're trying to calm down Gabriel and get him into the other room while trying
But still have the
like
conversation.
trying to stay in the
Yeah.
moment. Like she's trying to stay angry,
Yeah.
and he's trying to keep up the courage to tell her.
yeah.
Yeah, I think it's
What's
one
happened.
of the best scenes in the film, at least until that point. And there are many others, but that one I think is a highlight. So I think, anyways, the whole point of this is we agree that that's sort of like is a conclusion-ish, even though it's like an hour or more into the film. That is a big turning point in the story of their lives of these characters.
Yeah,
That's
so
all I'm
starts
saying.
it, yeah.
Yeah.
So after that happens, they sort of become like, if not estranged, like just more distant. I think it sort of time jumps a bit where he just
About 6 months.
Yes, I think they said 6 months. Yeah, I think that's right, Rich. So it's like he still comes home, but they're not, they don't really do much together. They're not speaking very much. Rose finally comes to see him to inform Troy at work that they've committed Gabriel again. Like he's been confined to the hospital again, even though like before that he was free. So like that sort of brings them somewhat together, or at least forces them to communicate with each other a little bit. And then also after that, they get a phone call during the night that his mistress has had the baby, but she has died during childbirth. So that means he has a new daughter at 53 or 54 years of age at this point. I think they said as Troy's character, that's how old he is. So then he has to go, bring the baby back home. And he also has a confrontation then at that point with Corey, Rose's son. Was Corey their son, or was that?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
he was there.
Okay,
son, yeah.
he's their actual, like, they're both his parents.
Mhm.
Yes.
But he's now growing up. I said Steve-O in the body. He wanted to play football, but Troy, like, sort of is against it and sort of screws him over in a sense, like, won't sign off on it. So they have, like, sort of a son versus father confrontation where Corey sort of like stands up to him, says, "You're an old man.
Strike three.
Yeah, you can't hurt me anymore. Like, I don't care about your baseball analogies." And like, and almost to drive that point home, he picks up Troy's old baseball bat and is about to attack him with it. And Troy just says, "You're gonna have to kill me with that. If you're gonna pick up that bat, here I am." So I have a scuffle, and sort of Corey sort of goes off in a huff, and Troy's like, "You don't come back to my house. This is my house. You want to be your own man? Go ahead." And then I think it sort of sets it up where he's also been drinking, Troy, that is, has been drinking a bit of a bottle and picks up the bat that Corey drops and walks away from and has his little baseball tethered to the tree in his backyard and says something like, "I can't taste anymore."
Right.
Like, it's almost like we thought it was like an early indication of a stroke or something health-wise bad was going to happen to him.
Yeah.
Because the filter changed too.
It
Like he
did.
was seeing,
I didn't
he
notice
was
that.
seeing
Yeah.
colors brighter.
Okay. I didn't notice that,
Definitely
actually.
did.
All
And,
right. Nice touch film. Yeah. Go see him.
I think that was just like his. it seemed like that was his invitation to Death to come back, because he's been talking to Death throughout this movie.
Sure, you're right. When his mistress, when he gets a phone call that his other girl on the side has died,
He goes full
he yells out
Denzel.
the window, yeah, like, come on, Death, like,
Yeah.
no more, just me.
Well, he did that like at least twice
Sure.
earlier
Right.
in the.
So anyways, so then it sort of time jumps again, where Corey now comes back, dressed in a Marines officer's uniform. He's joined them. He's like, real quickly earlier, he sees like a picture for the army. It's implied, obviously, he joined the forces.
Well, I mean, if he comes back in a uniform, it seems to be implied that he
Yes,
joined the
I'm
forces.
just saying, like, they set it up. Like, he doesn't come back in a uniform without like any like background. Regardless, and then quickly becomes apparent that they're all gathering because Troy has died and they're going to his funeral. And they sort of like have a somewhat of a familial reconciliation. Troy's daughter from his mistress is now about maybe 7 or 8 or so.
Yeah.
She's a bit more grown up, and they're all again gathering for his funeral and trying to do the best they can with it, and sort of have like a moment of at least somewhat peace and tranquility. And even though they're gathered, this is the reason they're gathering together. And it's a good shot of like the final shot of the film is them looking up in the sky, like the clouds are breaking. It's almost like a religious, sky god shot.
Gabe plays the
Well, Gabriel, of course,
trumpet.
plays the trumpet.
Finally plays the trumpet
Finally,
he's been
like
wearing
gets
around
one
his
note
neck.
out of it. Yeah, that sounds okay.
and the skies open up. He opens the gates,
Yes, as has been rambling like
quote unquote.
sometimes throughout the film. But I think it wraps up perfectly nicely. Like, it's sort of the ending it had to have. Like, I think we all agree, like, Troy pretty much had to die.
Yeah,
That was like,
Pretty sure we called it fairly early in the film.
exactly. But I think it was perfectly wrapped up. And again, they have some semblance of reconciliation, at least in that moment, if nothing else. So I think it was very well done, and it was still strong. That's all I have to say about it. What do you guys think?
You watch this man Troy lose everything in the conclusion of this work. Again, as I mentioned earlier, it's cracking. It fully breaks. He loses his wife. He gains a daughter, but loses his mistress. And he was never much of a parent. As much as he wanted to, thought he was a great parent, he wasn't much of a parent figure.
Yep.
He loses his son, as you just pointed out, Rich. I can't imagine. Like, he lost Bono. Like, it's sort of like the distance.
Yeah.
Like, the
Yeah, he
distance
even
of
lost his
that.
best friend. That's true.
I imagine the last 7 years of his life were him paying karmic dues to the previous however many decades before.
Garbage Day.
Garbage dues.
That's what I loved very much, how they undid how you saw this character.
Mhm.
Like with his, because like you believed his stories, you saw life, how he pictured it, how he viewed it, and then through the other characters, when they had their moments where they stood up to him or like had their words with him, you saw like how he really was.
It really was, exactly, yeah.
Or at least how they perceived him.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mm.
Like Corey especially is just like, you didn't give me anything.
Rose especially. Because
yes.
Rose
Both of them.
gives
one
particular line that I'm sure many women have wanted to say to their lovers at some point.
Or husbands,
I'm
whatever.
going to butcher, but it's basically like, yeah, I'll take care of your child, but you've lost like me as a woman type thing. Like,
Yeah.
you no longer have a woman, and it's kind of like he is now, the life of his child is now kind of held hostage by a spurned woman, and you're rooting for Rose the entire time.
I love that
It's
even
not-
the speech he gives before that, where he like fumbles and how he tells her how he's having the affair. She's, I've had those urges. I've had those dreams too.
I've been here. I've been staying in the same place as you for 18 years.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the
She's like, but I've still found it. She's like, I knew, after 5 years, or the analogy she gave, that the soil was hard. Like, she knew that he was never going to change and it was never going to get any better.
Mhm.
But she still found a way to
Nevertheless,
give herself to him.
Exactly. And I think that all goes to dialogue, but certainly like it's contained in all in conclusion. And so I'm gonna give it just as strong as a one as the first two.
I
Same
agree.
here.
Yep. So
All right.
also one.
1-1-1, and that'll bring Ian to themes.
I was very surprised by what themes emerged from this period piece, because I definitely thought there was going to be kind of a discussion on race that would go into this.
And there wasn't not in the way I guess we thought it was, but go on.
It was addressed, but as a reality that they existed in, like but it never like tried to make it. It was more of a family drama and more of about the ideas of what we are and what we wanted to be, and the struggles that really come from that. This could have been a character in Billy Joel's glory days, where and all the lies he's telling.
Bruce Springsteen?
No, was it Bruce Springsteen?
Yes, Bruce Springsteen definitely did glory days.
Oh yeah,
it doesn't really matter though. Go on.
Bruce Springsteen's glory days, but it's. Sorry, you threw me off with that.
Sorry.
And especially like when we just mentioned in the conclusion, when Viola Davis is also expressing that all the struggles that she put into and how many sacrifices she had to make for her life to build this image of, I was always what a good wife was supposed to be, in a sense.
Yeah.
And when do I get my chance for happiness?
Yeah, I gave up my hope. I had hopes and dreams too, but I let it go piece by piece to stand by you, and look where it got me, essentially. And
you've seen a lot of these themes before. These are addressed well here.
Yeah.
And I also like the idea that there's a thing about the son having to leave the home that's brought up a number of times throughout here, whether it's just fleeing. Troy left his
it's almost like a mirror.
Family. Yeah. Corey had to leave to join the army. So there's eventually the thing of having to leave the nest in a way. The fence, or the titular fence, has a thing about like not only keeping those out, but
keeping the family together.
Keeping the family together, keeping the secrets in, and also Troy's fear of death. And also, but that kind of weird thing of like I've lived the life that I wanted. I'm waiting to die now.
Yeah.
But I'm also too proud to. There's a lot of like neat little there's no overwhelming great theme here.
Yeah, but it's
all
all very
neat
subtle
little observations about life.
Agreed. Yeah, I think it's all of that good, Sivo.
I think that the overarching theme is just this idea of, as a family, you deal with all of this. This is life, and you deal with this, and sometimes you deal with it alone, and sometimes you deal with it together, and like that's what I love about this movie. It doesn't hammer at one nail the entire time. It's not like Troy always does it this way because this is what we want his character to be. It's like, hey, here's what a human being does.
Yeah.
He picks his battles. He does, he will agree with his wife on points, and then at other times he will, quote unquote, stand up for what he wants to say, or like stand up or like try to teach his son a lesson or whatever. And sometimes he'll give his son $10 because he's asked for it or whatever,
Human beings like a fence. You put up one plank at a time, and take many years to finally get it.
Yes, indeed.
Done.
Yes, you just one up analogy-wise the movie, I suppose. But no, I mean, I think it's all right. Like, sometimes you're facing problems with your family, and sometimes your problems are against your family, or within that. So I think that
or sometimes they're problems that the family or nobody can really deal with.
Exactly. On top of all that, exactly, Rich. So I think, because the movie did such a deft job of weaving all those things together, each of which could be its own separate theme,
right?
But they're all sort of slapped together because they almost like it. Again, humanistically, in reality, that's how life is.
And what makes it work is the fact that they're just as confused as the audience as to where they should head.
Yes, exactly. They don't have the answers. They're not telling you any answers.
Which is why, you got to take the crookeds with the straights.
Yeah, exactly. That was sort of a recurring line. They mentioned that line has been repeated a number of times in the film. But I think it sort of encapsulates all those themes in general.
I have two more themes.
Okay.
One is that any problem in life can be addressed through a baseball analogy.
Yeah.
Thank you, Denzel Washington.
Denzel definitely made a good argument for that case.
Loves the baseball analogies.
He convinced me that I'm going to start doing that.
Hey, son, you're sitting with a full count right now.
Don't strike out.
You're
in danger.
Out.
You're in a danger zone.
That's 2 strikes.
Sure. I'm going to go for Hail Mary. There's also a interesting aspect of that the child should not be punished for the sins of the father,
yes.
but the father can be redeemed through the children.
Via that,
and that your legacy can be like the true legacy that you leave behind is the children you leave behind, and in a sense they are damned by because they are the best and worst of what their parents brought.
That's a very good point. That the last one, it is. I think that a lot of this movie is about generations.
Yeah.
Talking about generations. There was, it wasn't a very long part of the movie, but a very important part of the movie is Denzel
Certainly was there.
Washington and Bono talking about their parents.
Yes.
Each talking about their parents and where they came from. Bono says that his dad left early, and Denzel Washington, interestingly, I'm going to bring this up quickly. Denzel Washington, or Troy, says that his father stayed and raised their 11 kids. His mother left them. There's a scene slightly after that scene where Gabe, his brother, is at a grave marked mother, and she was like 30 when she died or something.
32.
So Denzel Washington says in the story that their mother left them, but it seems that she died. So the way that he remembers her death is her like leaving them, I assume.
Well, Gabe could have also
I
just
just
found
thought of
the
that.
first
Yeah.
tomb that said mother on it.
Exactly. Like, I don't mean to be like,
I don't think so though.
I really don't, because
as you were talking though, Steve, I did think of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I see where you're coming from, but at the same time, like, he had a lot more. He saw a lot more than anybody.
People give him credit for.
A lot of people give him credit for.
Yeah.
Sure, but I mean, you guys are right. I don't disagree with any of that, and yeah, I think the movie deserves a shitload of credit, and the way that it was able to weave all those things together in such a believable and like just grittily portrayal of it. So
I also have another point to make about Troy and his relationship with his dad, because like he goes on that story about how he had finally manned up to go after his father, and after surviving being shot in the fucking chest, like ends the story with, "I hope he's dead."
and they found,
but
peace.
I hope he's
yeah,
but I hope he found peace.
Yeah.
And then like the conversation that he has with Corey, like later on, like it brings up moments of that where Corey just like, you can see that hate for him, like that hate for his dad, and like he's confused. Like he thought that he had done everything right up until that point, and you can kind of see that like slow realization that he's trying to push away, that he's like become like his father before him.
Yeah.
Which feeds into what you were saying, Ian, about inheriting the sin, both the good and the bad of your parents.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, so all those things are contained, and like I said, they're all just like not smashed together. They're just like organically, as you said, Rich, like woven into the story of this family and their history and the flaws that each one of them possesses and tries to overcome. Sometimes succeeding, sometimes failing.
Yeah. That said, I'm going to give it a 1.
Yeah, a very, very strong one. And that will bring Rich with antagonists.
All right, so I think we agreed that antagonist was Denzel Washington, Troy, Maxon.
I think at the end of the day, I will agree with that, yes.
Because like a lot of, well, pretty much.
Although, you go on and then I'll...
Okay, everything that transpired, like both the good and the bad, was brought about by him, especially the bad. Like each change in...
He was the catalyst.
Yeah, he was the catalyst.
Problems.
Yes, thank you. He was the catalyst for all of the problems that happened for the family to overcome.
Yeah.
See, I think that's true. Like, this is kind of an odd one in terms of this movie, because I definitely agree with that, Rich. But like, my traditional answer would be like just human problems.
Yes.
And yes, of course, like as embodied by Troy, I guess, as his character. But it's not like he's like doing it on purpose.
No, he's not. No, that's the thing.
That's the tragic thing about
why
it. Yeah.
that's why he's also the protagonist. I feel because like he's not doing this on purpose. It's just him.
Sure, that's just how he is, and I agree with that. Good.
Freud. But the idea of like killing your father and that really has nothing to do with this. It's more of the idea that kind of the masculinity that Troy believes. Like, if you look at all the major actual issues that come up in this work, which are him having to sleep with a younger woman in order to feel alive again, which is kind of in a sense, we're watching him go through a midlife crisis.
Yeah, I guess that's a good point.
Yeah.
And then him also being like, I got to toughen up my son, teach him the right ways of being a man. Although again, as you just brought up, it's the idea is that he doesn't want his son to become like him, but he is turning to the father that turned the son.
Yeah.
Because that's literally all he knows.
Yeah, it's that
like a tragic vicious cycle.
Yeah,
in
it's
a
that
sense.
masculinity thing, and I think like all of the major problems here, like there are a couple like random issues, like the greed of taking his handicapped brother's money and other things like that. But like the plot, like the things that change the plot of this story involve him trying to either be tough or recapture his youth.
So, what do you guys think of this? I may tie antagonist and protagonist together in this
Yes.
one because I think they're both Denzel
That was going to
Washington.
be my argument as well.
And I would,
which we touched upon.
I would say
Go ahead.
that Rose Viola Davis's character is also a protagonist.
Yes.
But as far as Troy goes, right, everything that he does wrong, all the problems that he creates, he also visibly hates himself about, like hates
Yes.
himself for.
or comes to realize that he created the problem that he's now stuck in.
Right, like he
Eventually, at least. Sure. Go ahead.
he talks about all these things and said, it's kind of like, well, there's nothing else I can do but be me, but he recognizes and discusses the ways that he is wrong,
He
like,
lampshades himself
throughout the movie.
And then, most interestingly, too, is like he wants his son to never make the same mistakes as he does, but he never actually says that to his son. He says it to his wife.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's true. That's a subtle but well pointed out. Yeah.
But
So,
on the other hand, he also is the center for a lot of light in people's lives as well. There's a section where Rose is talking about him, and she says, like, she's talking to Corey about him after he's dead, and he's like, your father was so big, this is all very suggestive at the end.
yeah.
But
The way she phrases it is a little odd, but
The movie itself, it was actually perhaps the most uncomfortable scene in this very.
that's because we're all immature children.
No,
here,
no,
but-
no. That was exactly how it was intended. She tried to take it to like a pure form, but like
he
it was
filled me
already
up.
soiled.
But like, the entire idea of that monologue, outside of
Yeah.
the
He's a larger than life
obvious
figure, is what she was trying to say.
is that he filled up a room with his personality.
Presence, sure.
He was very charismatic, and he also wanted good things for his family. Whether or not his actions necessarily made those good things happen is to be debated.
Sure.
I would say to some degree yes, and to some degree he fucked
Of course,
their
he did
shit
the
up.
best he could.
You know?
With life.
Being with
Yeah,
exactly.
But like that's what happens with families, a lot of times.
Precisely.
I think there's a good quote that says something like, if you don't, as a parent, if you're not messing up your kid's life, you're not doing it right, or something like that. Like
He's also incredibly self-destructive, and
Yeah.
What's so tragic about him is that he fully acknowledges
Yeah,
that.
he knows it, but nevertheless can't help it either. In spite of that,
Yeah.
I would say.
the thing is, I think he copes with it by fictionalizing a lot
Yeah.
of the world.
Good point,
for
yeah.
sure. Like, obviously, the stories he tells, and like I figured out immediately. I thought it was he was exaggerating for emphasis, but like I'm wondering if he actually believes the bullshit, or he needs to believe the bullshit he's spouting.
right.
Yeah, if he doesn't, then the facade sort of all falls
Well,
away.
it's like that's it kind of goes back to themes, but that's what gets him out of bed every morning.
Exactly.
Like you have his son Lyons, who like he has his music, Corey has his sports, Bono has him.
Yeah.
Like he says, he's like,
Yeah.
he's like, as soon as I ran into you, like you taught me how to live life, take the roll with the
I
punches.
learned
and
heaps
just,
about life
Yeah.
from you. Exactly. Yeah.
And then Bono, it says, leaves him once. Like
Once he
it's
realized
yeah.
he's not as great as he thought he was.
yeah,
Sure.
Like, well, I guess Bono surpassed him. Like he was faithful.
Mm.
Yeah, so I agree with what you said, Steve, within what you were saying, that Troy is both the antagonist and protagonist in some sense, and definitely Rose, I think, counts as well. But if we're talking about antagonist, he has got to be it, and also, if not the intangible, like just human family life problems.
Yeah. So I was going to say this. So we've talked about Troy as both antagonist and protagonist. I'm going to give Troy a 1 as an antagonist, and then let's talk about Rose.
Okay.
I don't treat her as a protagonist.
You treat her as supporting?
Because this movie follows Troy's story. It's Troy's story.
I don't know if I agree with that. I think it follows his family story.
I don't know. It definitely.
See, it's a hard question
because like it sticks with him more than it would be necessary to make everybody else a protagonist.
See what you're saying, Rich. Yeah, it's a tough one. It's an iffy one, if you will.
Because little things like whenever the other characters leave the scene, like it lingers
it's still
on him.
I could,
Yeah.
you know what? I'm gonna agree with you on this, and here's why. Because while Rose is shown to be human, let's say, you really see the full character of Troy, whereas you don't see like all the flaws of Rose. Like Rose is a just a great person throughout. Like you don't really see her flaws nearly as much as you see.
Well, she mentioned she wrapped her entire identity around Troy.
Yeah,
Right.
you see some of her flaws, but I guess
And Rose really comes into her own when she breaks away from
Yeah.
Yes.
Troy.
exactly.
And, but like what I would say is, I'm sure Rose has her own issues and like things that
She does
could
like
come
she-
out if this story
It's
really followed her instead of Troy.
Yeah, it's almost like she threw that at the audience too. Like I have my own dreams and wants, and what about
You're
those?
not seeing
yeah,
them.
you're not
Yeah.
seeing them. Yeah,
that's true. You know what?
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to see this movie from Rose's perspective,
I feel like that would be an even more heavy movie.
perhaps. But I mean, I guess he went up to sort of convince me on that point, Steve-O. So maybe we'll talk about it like coming up. But certainly, I will give Troy / Denzel and his portrayal of
Sure.
Troy a very strong ass one.
It's absolutely true.
Well, I'll say this: antagonist and protagonist getting ones for Denzel
Right.
Washington's
All right,
portrayal
fair enough.
of Troy Maxon.
But I think we're giving antagonists all a 1
Mhm.
based on that, which will bring you, in fact, 2 protagonists. Steve-O, continue on.
Well, I mean, I said pretty much what I wanted to say about that, and I kind of combined them. I think that his protagonist is wrapped up in his antagonist.
I definitely agree with that, but I'm gonna sort of like, if not meta narrative. So Viola Davis, who plays Rose, is nominated for Best Supporting Actress for
Sure.
this film for now, as of this moment. I think that's a slight. I would argue for her being a protagonist, like a 50-50. But based on what we just said, it might be not quite that, but she does a great job.
She does.
Yeah,
It's just that you're right. You don't follow her story per se, her perspective, I guess, as much, of course, as you follow Troy's / Denzel.
She's not laid bare like Troy
Yes,
is.
that's true. But I mean, she's like almost. She admits she was like, I tied myself to you. I gave up so much of my life for you, and you see that come through in her character.
Sure.
Yeah, but we only, in a sense, see her character as it relates
To him.
to him.
I get it.
And that was
yeah.
a choice on her part. And I really liked her character when she's starting to break away from it. But every time we see her, it's not, we see one scene of her in church, to hang out with new friends when
Yeah,
she decides
and it's
but
like a montage scene almost.
Yeah,
sure.
everything else is her saying, like, in bed with him, with them separate now. And like,
Yeah.
again, everything is, again, just as the character Troy would like, everything is filtered through him. So
Yeah, that might have got me. I don't know. I just want
Yeah,
to give her.
I think I agree
I
with
just
that.
want to give her as much credit as possible. Although I do agree that Denzel almost like Troy plays both sides of the same coin in that sense.
Yeah. So I'm going to give protagonist a 1. I don't think we
Yes.
need to talk too much more about it, but for Denzel Washington.
Yeah. Does anybody have anything to add?
nope.
I think I have to give him
1.
a strong 1 as well. So I guess that'll bring me 2 secondary characters with everyone else. So then in light of that, then Rose gets the strongest 1 ever in the world.
Yes,
But I think so. There are only like I think we wrote down 7 characters in this film. It's just their family and like one friend of the family, essentially.
Yeah.
So it's just them. And like you said, as we laid out in the beginning, yeah, it's a play style thing. So it's just them in their house or their yard, pretty much like the whole movie.
That's almost every scene.
Yeah,
There's
that's-
like 4 other scenes in the movie. That
And
aren't
so like,
there.
but I think it's such a believable, like, they're not dysfunctional. It's just, again, a true to life family with their own problems, with their own dynamic.
it's like we're just privy to the days when shit hits the fan.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Like, any other day, like maybe they come home and eat lunch or whatever, they have a fine time, like they're enjoying themselves. But we see every single second of drama that ever happens in this family's life over the course of like 5-10 years or so. But yeah, so like, if not Rose, I will count Gabriel as my favorite one. Like, I think it was a very good portrayal of like his brother who went to war and got injured, and now is, sort of like the town kook, but because he got injured in war. I think it was a very good portrayal by that actor. I'm sorry I don't have his name in front of me. But everyone else, Corey, Lyons, even Raynette when she's grown up, when she's 8, or Raynell, sorry, when she's 8 or 9, they have a little girl play her. I believe this family like so intensely that I could see it being like an actual family. So I think if everyone deserves a 1 in this film for secondary from me, according to me.
I completely agree.
Corey, I thought, was a great character, especially towards when he comes back as the Marine, because it actually, in a sense, you start following him. That once his father dies, as
he
the
becomes
main focal point.
Yep.
So he's now the direct heir to his father. There,
Little Red Dead Redemption.
Yeah.
Yes, which Eve doesn't like, but I like that game, so I agree with you there, Rich.
But I liked Lyons quite a bit, although he's more of he's in a sense the worst aspect of his father.
Yeah, he's like the wishy-washy,
No, kind of.
I don't even want to say worst aspect. I'd say 3/4 bad.
Maybe
Yeah,
like he's a version of what Troy could have been if he followed a different path.
He's following his dream,
whereas Troy didn't
until the end. At that
Well,
point.
he's following his dream without wallowing in his self-hate.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yes. Well said.
And he's in a not prison but workhouse.
Oh
now.
at the end,
Sure,
yes, yeah,
sure.
yeah.
I mean, it's sort of like an offhanded line there, but that is what happened to him. They ask him like, "Oh, what's up with you?" And he explains that. Sure.
So, and Raynell actually, I think, has or at least it's implied by the work that she has the brightest future of them all, and she can perhaps, in a sense, carry on his legacy without being tainted by the person.
She can embody the best parts of him that he always wanted to try to impart to his children.
I also
Because she's a girl.
want to give a shout out to my favorite character, Bono, who is the audience surrogate, because he's sitting there and like he's having fun, having a couple drinks, and then all of a sudden
family drama
then intense monologues start happening around him, and he just sitting there like, how do I get out of this?
Yeah, he's like
I
looking
love
around for
how
an
every
exit.
time he like tries to leave, and then like Troy calls him out on it. He like has a quip to like,
Yeah.
oh no,
like,
it's not about that. I'm
Well,
just
if you-
waiting for you to pass that
yeah,
bottle.
if you let loose that gin, I'll be good to go.
Ship it over here, and I'll listen to your family drama. I think my wife Lucille's calling me. No, she's not. Well, you're right. But yeah, you're right.
I want to go more into Raynell, because the reason I said like because she's a girl that she'll have a better life is because she doesn't have that mountain of like toxic masculinity that he's trying to heap on his sons.
No, that also was a very good point, and I think that was good consideration.
Plus, also, it's Rose raising her.
Yeah.
That's what I was just gonna say. Yes, that is a very good point. But also, she's very young when he dies.
Yeah.
So he hasn't had the chance to like ruin her when
Influence
teenage
interrupt
years,
her.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
like he did to Corey.
Yeah.
And basically, Rose has a very impactful line at the end where she says, "What Troy did for you to Corey, what Troy did for you, I want to do for her." And like it's very strange to hear that at that moment, because what you've been thinking about what Troy did for Corey this entire time is leave this legacy of like you said, toxic, horrible masculinity and like just hate that they had for each other. But what comes out in the end there is that like they are so much alike, and Troy really left Corey his seemingly his discipline and his
Some
drive
good parts.
and his drive
and like
to
his larger than
to
life
do right.
personality.
Yeah, and his personality.
And like you
And Rose has those things, similar traits to give to Raynell, and that's seemingly that's what she's wanted for a long time.
And you can still see like the little bit of Troy that Raynell has in her, like with the song that she sings at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Blue the dog.
Yeah, the thing that brings Corey and
Blue.
And Run Out Together is like the song that Troy taught them about his father's dog that he made up, and they share that moment together, and it's a pretty touching moment.
And it gets him to go to the funeral.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm definitely giving all of them a strong one.
Yeah, we mentioned all the supporting characters are all great.
Because it's a play style again, there were only so many, and they all did an amazing job.
I think the ball tied to the tree deserves a special
All
mention.
right, fine. Baseball, tree, tether.
Blue,
That old rag.
And the old rag still on the tree.
Sure. Well, anyway, I think this will be a good one. That'll bring us to dialogue, and it goes back to Ian.
Where do I begin?
All of it. Awesome.
Start at the beginning.
Let me give you a long monologue. Now, I mean, it's if you like dramatic plays, specifically the style of dialogue they have with long soliloquies and like building a lot of the like backstory based on like the assuming you know the knowledge but informing you with like retelling like stories and
But
all
it's
that
like
kind of stuff.
retold in a way where it's not like they're not talking to the audience like, as you know.
It's not exposition.
Yeah, it's not exposition.
It's just natural. Again, yeah. I agree with that.
And there's great moments of levity throughout, especially certain characters like Gabe and Bono, who do a very good job. But I mean, like, I don't know, if you guys want to throw out quotes, cool, but I'm going to give this a very, very strong one because I thought this was, like, I love the dramatic play style, and this captured very well.
Now, I don't want to throw out quotes because I think you should just see this movie
No,
and
dude, you
experience
really
it.
can't throw out quotes.
For
There's
yourself.
so much.
I'm not going to do a delivery like
The only
Denzel.
quote that I would
Fuck
throw
you,
out
man.
is the only one
exactly,
that, like the only one that took me out of the movie because I felt it was a little too on the nose.
All
was
right.
when Bono said,
Yeah.
"Some people build fences to keep things out.
You're right.
Some people keep
That
build
was
them
the
to
most,
keep
like,
them in."
Play-like line, but I had no problem with it, but it was like, compared to everything else that had come before that seemed so natural and organic, it was a bit jarring. But I think, Ian, you mentioned Cat on the Hat Tin Roof, and I believe Tennessee Williams wrote that play. It felt like a modern-day Tennessee Williams play to me.
It was only
I'd agree.
jarring to me, I guess, because that was that movie's version of a title drop.
Yeah.
Sure. And that's, like, I'll forgive it.
It was they mentioned fences a lot of times throughout this,
Yeah,
but
but
that was the
only
time
time.
that it felt like a title drop. Yeah.
I guess I'll agree with you guys on that front. But regardless, it was so snappy, so believable. It was like
It wa-
seamless,
the
flowing into each other. Yeah.
the dialogue was incredible, and it was absolutely not hurt by the amazing acting throughout.
The thing is that it's hard to say this is believable dialogue because it's believable in the play verse.
I believe
Like,
it,
this
though.
thing is like,
I don't know what to say. But
nobody particularly
see what you mean.
speaks like they do in like dramatic plays.
Mm.
And this was obviously like stylistically, yeah, it was actually kind of restrained, more restrained than other works I've seen, but it still has that feeling. But again, I love that style, and I'm always going to give it a good score for that.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I got not much to say. Believed it, like I said, like it was natural feeling to a family who was in the time and the place that they're in, and the situation they're in, and with the situation and like what they're dealing with.
Anything that brought up like the past or like what the situation was with the new character that was introduced, I felt was very organic with the dialogue.
Yeah.
Because it was like, especially when it got too heavy, where it almost felt like they were going into exposition. One of the characters was, "I'm done with this. Like I can't deal with this anymore."
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have much more to say about that. But it's going to be a 1 for me, for sure.
Yep, looks like it's 1s all around, and that'll bring us to style with Rich.
Yeah, I guess style was for me very play-like.
Play style, yeah, exactly.
But like I
as we said,
like Ian, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a lot. Mostly because of the dialogue.
Yeah, I'm not to cut you off, Rich, but like
No, not at all.
there was this almost immediate and intense feeling of closeness with these characters, and a lot of that has to do with the portrayals, and a lot of that has to do with the dialogue. But I would also say a lot of it has to do with the feeling that you're on the
Framed
stage
as if it
of
was
a
a stage.
play
Exactly.
as you're watching this. You are there. You're in it with them, and like I don't remember. Oh, Denzel Washington directed this. Denzel
I was waiting
Washington
to point that out.
did a terrific job, making you feel like you're in that backyard and that
Like
you're
I
in that kitchen.
Like I said at the beginning of the movie, like it was like walking in on like my family, just like having a conversation or an argument.
Yeah.
You're just there on their front porch or their back porch or their yard or whatever when he's building the fence.
Yeah.
Just overhearing it.
Like you'd be a neighbor, like sitting in your kitchen, just like, man, these Maxons, man, I can't.
There was one section that I thought they were gonna go back to something having to do with this, but there's one point where Troy is having an argument with Corey out on the front porch, and then Corey like wanders off. And then he looks, and the neighbors are just like watching him. I thought he was gonna like get into some kind of argument with them later. Nothing like that ever happens again. Like he doesn't have neighbors after that.
Sure, I guess. I did, actually, now you mentioned Steve, I do remember that part. Yeah.
I mean, they're used to. Like Gabe's there.
Yeah.
He's.
Oh no, it was that's right. It was Gabe that was there, and like Troy was looking at like Gabe ran down the street yelling about hellhounds or something, and Troy looks to the neighbors, and they're like peeking through their blinds and stuff, looking over.
The period style of this work also was done very well.
Yes.
It was very believable with the costuming and the set, like not set design, but like the.
I would say set design counts. Yeah, sure.
It worked really well, but yeah, like both the play aspect of it and I'm actually very interested in seeing the original play to see how many different like set pieces they have.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And like you said, yeah, I mean that's the strongest thing to me, at least. As you said, it felt, seemed, and was portrayed as a play, and because of that, it just became so much better. One other
interesting thing that I wanted to mention before we move on is the movement of the characters in this was like it didn't feel like it didn't get in the way of itself, but it was really good. That's the best way I can describe it.
I think
like,
natural, organic
characters. Yeah, characters would like circle around the set that they were on. And they would be talking. There would be a 15-minute set where they're standing in the backyard just talking about the same thing or whatever, and they would move. They would be standing up, drinking, and then they like one of them would sit down, the other two would circle around, like sit in the other chairs. Like I noticed it the entire time, just because I was looking out for it, and it was great. There was always this like sense of movement within the scene, so as to not make it seem stale.
Boring, but
so as to not
they
make
were
it
just
seem stale.
Still in the backyard or whatever. Yeah, I see what
like
you're saying.
This visual sense of freshness was kept up throughout the entire movie.
Absolutely agree. So that's all around.
Yeah, I'm gonna give it a 1.
All right, and that'll bring us to the final recommendation impression. Steve-O, go.
If you like good movies, you'll like this movie. No, it's honestly it's a great film, done as we've been talking about for a while in a play style. It's very well done. I would love to see it as a play, as you mentioned. But as the film and as directed by Denzel, great job all around by everybody involved, seemingly. And I would recommend this to anybody who's looking for a heavy and heady piece to watch. I wouldn't say if you're looking for a blockbuster, go watch this, but if you want to go sit down and watch a good film that you can think about for a while, this is a good one to watch.
Yeah, it definitely surprised me with how well the dialogue carried this movie. Like it's all dialogue, all dialogue. Yeah. And I thought, like, if you'd like told me beforehand that like that's what it was, I would have been a little hesitant. Yeah, I would have been a little hesitant going in, but it does its job.
Yeah, so I've now sort of made myself a new measuring stick. Would I see this film again? Yes, I would. I would like to see it as the original play, or just again, like I watch it again next week. And since we recently had done Hacksaw Ridge, which is ostensibly a war movie, this movie was more compelling just watching people have conversations in their backyard versus fucking war footage. And like I think that's some of the best praise I can say. It was so well handled, so well done, so well adapted that it's more compelling than a mediocre like a war film.
Yeah.
So yeah, and like you said, Denzel did a great job, both acting and everyone else, and Framer. Like see it. If this wins this year at the Oscars, I would have no problem. In fact, I would salute that a lot if it won. So that's the best praise I can say for it.
See, I'm kind of cheating when I come to this work because, I love this style of movie. I want to see this again, not as a movie, but as the play. This is right up my alley for a film. So yeah, there are people I wouldn't recommend this to, but the majority of people I associate with, I certainly would. Yes, I would tell them to get a nice glass of wine, sit down, and get ready for a really intense experience. But again, this is what I consider to be the perfect genre style of movie. So, but again, I'm giving it a thing. I'll give the score out now. It's a 10 show round.
So very quickly,
yeah,
just on a judgment scale, do you guys think this is a 10 movie?
Yes.
Yes.
In this case, it is a perfect 10 to me. I know you like to ask that a question when we.
I do. When we all give it a 10,
when we rate a movie 10,
I think it deserves
another 10.
Another thought, we'll say.
I think it's probably a 9.7, something like that. I don't think it's a 9. I think it's upwards of a 10. But then again, I told you that I'm heavly biased towards the style of
my
film.
first impression is
that's
that
what I was
going to
say. Actually, Ian,
I can't. For example, like just real quickly, let's say, would you take any scenes out of this film? No, I wouldn't. Would I change any Like I can't think of anything I would change or rewrite that I didn't like about this film. So therefore, to me, it is, in fact, Steve-O, to answer your question, a perfect 10, yes.
But I consider there are better plays out there.
I understand that.
And if there are better, then it can't be a perfect score.
Right. Well,
but
why can't
I
they
don't
both
think
be 10s? But let's not.
That's where I'm going with it. It's the thing is, it's not to me. It's near. I just have an inkling it's not.
I would agree with you, Ian. I think this is a very near perfect movie, but I don't think it's a perfect movie, but it's very, very close.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm sorry to
either way, we have given it
sidetrack us there.
Fences swung for the fences and in fact hit a 450-yard home run.
450 yards.
450 foot. Sorry,
that's so long.
Over the stadium. Denzel hit out of the park, and we were right there with him on the baseline.
Yeah.
So that'll do it for this episode of Von Mots. I've been Scott Thurlow, as always, joined by Jonathan Manzer.
If this doesn't get few awards for the cast, Viola Davis, and maybe even Denzel Washington for Best Actor, I'd be very upset. They really do deserve for this the emotional weight they put into their roles.
I agree.
The amount of lifting they had to do for this script is like Olympian level.
Yes. And that was Rich Perry's assessment. And Stephen Amosi, what is your final thought?
The Hank Aaron of Denzel Washington movies.
All right. I kind of like that. I can't do it any better. That's been it for Bon Mots, the Motskers 2017. Good night. We'll see you next time. This has been Bon Mots. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time.
Editing and engineering by Christopher Morgan. Music by Christopher Morgan. Check us out on YouTube and iTunes for the shows, and on Facebook and Twitter for updates.